Drugs are compounds which interact with a biological system to produce a biological response. There are 4 different drug classification systems: clinical effect, chemical structure, target system, and target molecule. Clinical effect is by pharmacological effect. Drugs can be classified depending on the biological or pharmacological effect they have. For example, analgesics, antipsychotics, antihypertensives, anti-asthmatics, and antibiotics. So pretty much the name of the drug or the classification shows you exactly what they do. This is useful if one wishes to know the full scope of drugs available for a certain ailment, but it also means that the drugs included are numerous and highly varied in structure. This is because there are a large variety of targets at which drugs could act in order to produce the desired effect, and it is therefore not possible to compare different painkillers, for example, and expect them to look alike or have some sort of common mechanism of action. Chemical structure. By chemical structure, many drugs which have a common skeleton are grouped together. For example, penicillins, barbiturates, opiates, steroids, and catecholamines. In some cases, this is useful classification as the biological activity and mechanism of action is the same for the structures. For example, the antibiotic activity of penicillin. However, not all compounds with similar chemical structures have the same biological action. For example, steroids share a very similar tetracyclic structure, but they have very different effects on the body. By target system, drugs can be classified according to whether they affect a certain system in the body. For example, of a target system is where a neurotransmitter is synthesized, released from its neuron, interacts with a protein target, and is metabolized or reabsorbed in the neuron. This classification is a bit more specific than classifying drugs by their overall pharmacological effect. However, there are still several different targets with which drugs could interact in order to interfere with the system, so the drugs included in this category are likely to be quite varied in structure because of the different mechanisms of action involved. And then finally, we have target molecule. Some drugs are classified according to the molecular target with which they interact. For example, anticholinesterase are drugs that act by inhibiting acetylcholinesterase. This is a more specific classification as we have now identified the precise target at which the drug acts. In this situation, we might expect some structural similarity between the agents involved and a common mechanism of action, although this is not an inviolable assumption. However, it is easy to lose the wood for the trees and lose sight of why it is useful to have drugs which switch off a particular enzyme or receptor. For example, it is not intuitively obvious why an anticholinesterase agent could be useful in treating Alzheimer's disease or glaucoma. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed.